But
Okay.
yeah, we've really liked the seeing families out more now too, you know. And where are you, Trevor?
Well, I split my time. So right now I'm up in the Pacific Northwest. I'm sort of east of Seattle.
Okay, so
Um,
are they still on lockdown over there?
I can't tell you because I'm sort of in my own little bubble.
You're still in your little bubble. But yeah, it's nice to see, you know, the families out playing ball. To me, it feels
Brilliant.
like it's like the 1950s again, you know, the
Well, I don't watch the
1960s.
news. I deliberately don't watch the news, so I'm pretty late to finding out what the latest behavior is supposed to be. So all of a sudden, I see families walking wearing masks, and I give them a funny look, saying, "What's all that about?" So then I have to go and investigate and say, "Oh, I should have been wearing a mask." You know.
Ah, that's such a good policy, staying away from the news right now. It can be a little much. I don't partake too often, but when I do, I deeply regret it. But it's important, you know. So Trevor, I was so excited to meet you because we have, you know, some friends in common, and I feel like I kind of know you already. So thanks for coming on to the show.
My pleasure. These are always fun because they go in any direction. I love that.
Yeah, I know, and we can get into all kinds of territory. So I know, like, you know, you have this amazing book out, but I really wanted to crack open this like story you have about how, you know, how you started this like wild business. You were like a physicist first.
I started out as a physicist, yes, but that's
Uh-huh.
because I was also a stalker and I'd fallen in love with my wife. She worked, she worked in a cancer hospital, so
Uh-huh.
I had a physics degree, so I went to work as a physicist in the cancer hospital and stalked her for 6 months until she ran out of excuses. And
Ah,
that's really how I got into that. But I mean, physics is something I learned when I was a kid. Hiding, I used to hide in the town library to avoid sectarian bullying. And so to pass the time, I just started reading books. So I read
wow.
loads, biographies that have really changed my whole approach to life,
Uh-huh.
and books on psychology and physics. And why this stuff isn't taught in schools is beyond me because it completely changed my life completely.
Right. Oh, I so agree. Wow. I mean, and let's just, you know, I'm putting out to the ethers some serious education reform. Like while we're at it, while everything's kind of like rearranging itself, teaching things like that. So tell me, how do you feel like it would change children if they were taught this stuff when they were younger?
They'd realize that they have power to have a, you know, not to have the life that they're told that they're going to have. When I had a career counselor, it was obligatory to have a session with a career counselor when you were 16, because that's when
Uh-huh.
in English schools people split. They either left school and went to work, or you went on to university level, sort of training, if you like.
Uh-huh.
And and she looked at me and she knew my background. She knew how poor we were. My father was unemployed. My mother was dying of cancer. She looked me up and down and she said, "I've got the perfect job for you, Trevor. There's an apprenticeship, a management apprenticeship in a chicken packing factory down the road." That was her view of what was
It's
available to me
perfect.
in life. so I was very polite, thanked her very much, and I'd already decided that I was going to be an officer in the Navy. I'd already made that decision, which
Yeah.
was crazy for somebody like me in those days. To think that someone from that background in that town could go to such an elite
True.
academy like that. It was
True.
unheard of. But I
So
did,
you
and
were thinking big. You were thinking big when, I mean, it
I learned
just,
it. I learned it from the library. Yeah, learned the magic of thinking big. Yeah,
no kidding, really. So you don't feel like it was something you were just kind of born with, a gift that you were born with to be a big thinker. You feel
absolutely.
like the library opened things up for you.
Reading definitely just changed my life, and fortunately my dad was a voracious reader as well, but and I think he gave up on even trying to get jobs so he could read more actually. so
Oh my God.
so yeah, so I was really curious, and my family used to joke with me that I was a font of useless information, because I'd be a pain in the ass by saying, "Hey, did you know this? Did you know this?" So
Wow.
it just changed my approach to life, that you can take control. You don't have to let life determine what happens to you. You can actually determine what life you have. And
Hmm.
so I got most of that from reading really inspiring biographies, and these were biographies of pioneers and um, musicians and business people and adventurers,
Hmm.
just fantastic stories in history and modern. And I saw the same patterns of behavior amongst them and the same way of thinking. And they'd all started off in really adverse circumstances, or at least most of them had. And I was
Hmm.
thinking, here I am feeling sorry for myself, and they had it much worse than I have. And I'm kind of cementing myself in as kind of a quicksand here by thinking, low of myself. And so I
Hmm.
just followed their behaviors, and it was basically just to very quietly start to
Wow.
believe in myself and gain self-confidence, and
Yeah.
realize that the world's your oyster if you just choose to change your attitude a little bit.
Right. Well, you're making a really good point because they say, who you associate with really can shape you, really, really shapes you. So if you want to see how you're doing, look at the five closest people
Right.
to you kind of
Right.
thing. And, but I had never really made the connection that you can do that exact same thing. If you don't know people that are wealthy, you can read from them. You can connect through books. So I never really made that connection. That's fascinating.
Well, when you do, I mean, we know now how it works because I'm a physicist. I'm fascinated with the interaction between energy and matter. So we know now that between all the little microparticles in the universe, there's no such thing called space. It's all linked by the Higgs
Hmm.
field, which I call cosmic glue because visually I think that makes sense. That if
Hmm.
there was no cosmic glue to slow us down, we'd shoot through the universe at the speed of light, and we'd never experience this solidity. And so we
Hmm.
slow down, and we have a life of a physical life, if you like. But
Hmm.
in doing that, you're able to connect with anyone, anywhere, in the future, in the past, because of space time. So you and I are actually, we're looking at each other through a video, but we're actually also connecting at a conscious level during this conversation, which is
Hmm.
why I think you are very much like me. When we start a conversation, we say, "I feel like I've known you forever," and it's
Hmm.
because we've already made this connection, and we already have this kinship and this sort of like-mindedness. And so you get that. So I got that through reading books, but now as a kind of physicist, I understand how the process works. It's not new age, you know, ideological thinking. It's a real
Thank
physical
you.
process.
Thank you for saying that. And I do feel like people are kind of catching on. Don't you feel like, Trevor, these days people like the conversations about maybe quantum and maybe law of attraction is one of those conversations, but I feel like they used to be more fringe, right? Like 20 years ago, it was like, oh, you have to be like totally new age in order to be talking like that. And now it's like all over LinkedIn, the business folk are kind of catching wind that this is reality. It's not some uh, airy concept out
Right.
here. Can you talk a little bit more about your findings along the way?
Well, I think science is finally catching up with the sages, and it's not the other way around. And
Hmm.
I think that there's two type of people. There's some people who they just want to hear the stuff that they want to believe. So they're happy to read a new age book that says positive thinking, and so they say, okay, I'll think positively. I'm a scientist, so I want to know why. How does that work? Why does that work? I want to prove
Uh-huh.
it to myself. And
Uh-huh.
and so I understand now. The thoughts are little packets of energy. They take on the same. So they're caused by a neurochemical reaction in your brain that you know transforms the kinetic energy. So in 500 milliseconds, you can observe and measure that energy, and that goes out into the universe. It's the real thing with real energy, and it
So
comes back.
juicy.
It has to come back as its material equivalent. So that now I think,
Okay, say that
oh,
again. Okay, it
yeah,
comes
I
back.
mean, well, yeah, because energy has to follow certain laws. Okay, so everything
Mhm.
everything everything in the universe is made of this we call it, string theory calls it, jiggling strings of energy, and I love that
Yes.
visual. I really like that, and,
Uh-huh.
and that means that even this desk and the trees behind me, they're made of the same stuff. They're both alive, which is amazing when you think about it. That's a whole nother conversation, a philosophical conversation.
I
But I'm very
know.
kind. I make sure I'm very kind and talk nicely to my desk now. Now that I know as a scientist. So the things about energy, it has to follow certain laws, and there's really three key ones. But the one that is of interest to us in this conversation is that energy can't be created or destroyed. It can only be converted into another form. That's also the definition of
Mm-hmm.
magic. Magic is
Uh-huh.
the conversion of one form to another form within the laws of nature under the action of will. Okay, so it's the same thing, quantum physics.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so the thought, there's some Japanese scientists have actually taken a picture of an actual thought in its process of creation. It's a beautiful
No
thing.
way.
Yeah, it's on one of my courses, a transformation. I found it, and people all people say exactly what you said. The video lasts about 14 seconds, and everyone goes, "No way!" it's beautiful. But then you see, oh my God, it's the real thing. So if I have a thought and I send it out to the universe, and let's say it's a thought that could possibly harm me. So I always use two classic examples. Let's say I go online. In the days when I had a lot of debt, I'd go online and look at my credit card balance. And I go, oh my God, no, that's terrible. How did I get in such a mess? I hate being in debt. Well, those are all powerful thoughts that I have
Right.
no trouble but to convert to their equivalent. So they
Right.
come back into my life to give me even more reason to say, oh my God, how did I get in such a mess? I hate being in debt. And that's what quicksand feels like. You go downward spiral because you're having the wrong thoughts. So when you
Mhm.
know the process, you think, well, how about I just change my thoughts? And so you react differently. So you say something like, I'm debt free, and I'm going to go to the liquor store, buy a bottle of the most expensive champagne, and pay cash. And that goes into the universe. And that comes back and creates miracles in your life. And before you know it,
Yeah.
you're debt free. And you say, how the hell did that happen? It's a
Yeah.
miracle, but it's
Yeah.
not. It's a physical process.
Yes. Well, yeah, I love that science is kind of is coming around. I feel like people are coming around as well. But let's talk a little bit about magic, because I'm a huge fan and I talk about magic a lot. And I do think there's a misunderstanding about magic, that somehow magic is some new age concept out there. When, from my understanding, is that the reason why humans thrive for hundreds of thousands of years is through processes of magic. It's through having a deep connection from talking to the tree, from talking to the tree, asking it where the buffalo are, So for me, it's like this, wonderful field that we are constantly in, and we are constantly engaged in a either conscious magical act or unconscious magical act. But can you tell me a little bit more about your perspective on magic? Because I know that you really speak a lot about it, and it's part of being having these $1 million businesses and all of this stuff. So just talk more about that.
Well, thanks for the question, Karen, because it's really important, and I'm sure most of your audience already get that magic is real. But so I had to learn that as a kid, because I had magical experiences and I didn't realize that it was a real thing. I thought it was just me, And so as I've grown up, so magic is simply a process of converting energy. And so I do that with a business. So I walk in the woods, and suddenly I have a winning idea, and I smack myself on the forehead and say, why have I waited 40 years to have that idea, or 50 years to have that idea? It's been out there all the time. I wasn't, I wasn't tuned into it. And so then I convert that magical idea into a physical entity called a business. And so I create a business. I've changed the form of energy into a physical form. And that's the process of magic. Why I talk about it a lot is because I want to try and demystify it a bit.
Exactly.
Because people do, they hear the word magic, and of course, and I used to be like this. I've been brought up thinking that magic was, for hippies and new age people, and didn't really exist, and little kids reading books on fairies and stuff like that. And now I realize, so now from a physics standpoint, I know from string theory that in order for anything to exist, anything at all, it has to exist in at least 10 dimensions. Mathematically, it can't exist in less than 10. Some people say 28. That's where that science is going.
Okay, that's next level.
Right. So that really has amazing implications for us, because you and I, if we don't believe in magic, or we don't use magic in our lives, we only get to understand and experience 3 dimensions. Length, breadth, height. That's all we get to understand. And it's very limited, and actually, to be honest with you, a bit boring. And so it has all kinds of philosophical questions. So what happens when my 3-dimensional body stops working and breaks down? What happens to the other 7 dimensions?
Yeah.
So if you understand magic as I understand it from a scientific standpoint, a quantum physics standpoint, then you realize that, I'm really quite fascinated by those other 7 dimensions. What do I have to do in order to experience what they might be like? And so I start to develop different tools and techniques in my armory. Things like I work on my intuition, because I would if I could get 10% of women's intuition into a bottle, I'd be a multi-billionaire. I'd be the richest man on the planet if I could sell that.
I'm working on it.
So I've learned tools and techniques that allow me to start to use my intuition. I've learned techniques to allow me to stretch my senses. In the New Age days, people used to talk about ESP, but they didn't understand that it's a real thing. It's like Paulo Coelho would say, you stretch your senses.
It is.
And as you stretch your senses, you get to go through the thin veil that holds us in a 3-dimensional world, and you have these wonderful, absolutely inspiring experiences. But they're also valuable experiences, because you realize that if you can create something on another dimension using imagination, it has no choice but to show up in the physical world. And so if I create, $100 million business in my mind, it will become $100 million business, and it has, 6 times now. So
yeah. I mean, you should just rewind that and just say that again slowly and deliberately.
I do talk fast. I apologize.
I know, but say it again. How many businesses, and how big? Say it one more time. I'm going to soak it in. Just
okay. So I started I'm a late bloomer, because I was never interested in money. So I wanted a life of adventure. So I used the same techniques just to travel around the world to visit 56 countries, but in a very luxurious manner. I wasn't going to do it on a backpack.
Right.
So I'm staying in the best places and living the life of dreams. And then I just, after I turned 40, I thought, I'm just going to settle down a bit. Or Lynn and I decided to settle down a bit. We've been married 38 years. And so I thought, I'm going to start my own. I've got an idea. I want to fix something that I feel is wrong in the industry that I've had this amazing life in. And so I came up with a winning idea and I started that company. But before I even turned it into a real company, before I incorporated it, I imagined selling it for $100 million. The business idea was accused of being crazy, stupid, impossible by everybody who came anywhere near it. Anyway, 7 years later, I sold it for 105.5 million.
Oh my gosh.
That was my first success. But I also didn't have to work very hard on it. So I use a business model that frees up my time. Basically, businesses run themselves. I call it the hub model. So there's no employees, which is what usually takes all the time in the corporate world.
Right. And the drama, so much drama.
None of that. And so I don't work more than 5 hours a day, and I really never have.
Yeah.
I decided I was a bit bored. So I started company 2 and 3 alongside. And so I'm running the 3 companies on a couple of hours a day from an office just like this, home office. And then so the total sales value of those 3 was 300 million. But the way the deals are structured, that it'll eventually be 600 million because it goes on milestones. And then I'm currently doing company number 4, which its current value is somewhere, it's around about $1 billion, I would say.
Oh my God, that is so cool.
I wouldn't take less, but I'll put it that way.
Yeah.
And then company 5 and 6 are non-profits. I have an animal sanctuary and
where? Where's your animal sanctuary?
It's up by the Canadian border, a place called Bellingham.
Oh, no kidding. Oh, that's wonderful. Okay. So I love how you casually, move through this story, but it's really like intense, right? It's really intense that you're able to just imagine $100 million business and then create a bunch of them all of a sudden. So let's break this down for our listeners, because I know that my listeners are really heart-centered humans. They often have the sense of a mission. They often want to create something that's powerful, but really don't know how to go about that. So number one, I could see that you're a big thinker. Like you just like, hey, $100 million, like who does that? Like I'm realizing I need to do that. Like as my first, I need to think of that. I'm just like, okay, a couple of millions, wait a second. What about 100 million? So what, can you break it down? What on earth were you doing and are you still doing to make that happen?
So I learned this from other people. There's no genius on my part. I learned it from the biographies that I read when I was young, and all of these amazing people set incredibly high standards. They people like Madam C.J. Walker. I mean, imagine being in her shoes. Slavery is quote unquote just been abolished, but they were even more enslaved after abolition. And she's born to slaves. She's pregnant at 14. She's starving and emaciated. She went on to become America's first female, we don't have to say black, America's first female millionaire. Can you believe that? That her disadvantages, and yet she set such a high target for herself. I mean, she was abused and all, everything you could possibly have that would make you feel cemented into quicksand, she had in her life. So she was one of the first real inspirations for me, and I still keep her biographies, and every now and again, when sometimes I have the same hang-ups as everybody else, so sometimes I start to doubt myself, I will read something about someone like C.J. Walker or someone like that, and so I realized that the magic is in the thinking big, because and I've found out in my life it takes the same energy to make 100 million as it does to make 1 million, as it does to make 1,000, as it does to make 100. It takes exactly the same energy.
Yeah,
it's just your imagination that has to change, and I've been slow to learn that lesson, because my first imagination was $333,333, which was what I said I will earn in a salary one day. And
that was an insane amount of money, probably back then.
I was, because I was earning £7,000 in England. And so when I first had that imagination, it would be 1993. So I was earning that in 1997. And I didn't even notice. I realized at the end of the year I'd earned 400,000. And so
it's so funny how that happens. Yeah.
Why didn't I think in millions? So then I started thinking in millions, and then why don't I think in hundreds of millions?
Yeah.
And so it's all about self-confidence. And I don't think you can't. There's absolutely no reason why you can't go from 0 to $1 billion in your mind, and lots of people do. The Richard
Mm-hmm.
Bransons of this world have always been thinking like that. But you know, when you start out in certain circumstances, I started out really poor, you know, till I was 17, if you like, and I thought that's what life was going to be like for me. So I've had to overcome limiting thoughts, if you like, and that takes a bit of effort. That takes some discipline and tools and techniques, and
Of
those
course.
I provide all of those in the course transformation, because many people who do the course transformation, you know, they've got limiting beliefs that they've learned over a couple of decades, that people have told them that they're limited, and that, you know, wealth is for other people, not for you, and everything. And so you have
Oh,
to
absolutely.
unravel that first,
For
kind of
sure.
break yourself down, and then start to build up this self-confidence, which is all done in the imagination.
Yeah, it starts there first. I know for me, you know, because I also grew up really poor, and then a brown woman, and, you know, a woman, and, you know, all the things,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
There's a
correct.
lot of deconstruction that has to go on. And I remember for me, when I first envisioned my first six figures, like, it sounded so insane. It was ridiculous, but I had to kind of go through the process that you're talking about in a way to first of all, to challenge why I felt that I was not born to be a wealthy person. Because I used to really feel like, okay, that money stuff is for other people, it's not for me. Um, and so I love what you're saying here. It really does start in the imagination. Just you have to actually hold it. But it really never occurred to me to dream of $100 million thing. I mean, it's like, you know, I'm still like smacking myself, like, what the hell else am I doing? What am I doing? I need to
But
go
the
back
other
to my
thing,
vision board.
the other thing that helps is that you don't have to believe it. You don't have to believe it, because it's a physics process. It's an energy process. It will work whether you believe in it or not. You don't need the,
Right,
and so you just do it anyway.
right,
And believe me, when I'm doing it, I'm thinking I'm crazy. If I say this out
right.
loud, I'm going to be put in a straitjacket. But I do it anyway because it works,
I
and
know.
it
It still
works.
sounds crazy. It still sounds crazy. So so tell me, so you've cracked the code on wealth. I mean, like extreme levels of wealth that many people feel like is inaccessible to them. How has it helped you? Because I think it's important to go like, okay, randomly I want $100 million. But sometimes you got to have the emotion and the feeling behind it. Break down like how it's really supported you, because I think sometimes money makes people more insane and more crusted over and nastier, and other people who kind of do it in a different way, that doesn't happen for. So I want to talk to you about that.
I'd say, okay, so there's a couple of things. The first thing is that when I had no money and I imagined having money, I was excited, and then when I had money, I was just grateful. My whole emotion in that.
Ah, that's so great.
No, everything's changed. Everything changed. So I realized that actually having an attitude of being grateful all the time would have made it happen a lot quicker. So I
Right.
changed that. That's number one. Number two thing is, it's really interesting. So people have a perception of, I think if you get overnight wealth, it can be a tricky thing.
Yes.
If you win the lot, it could be a tricky thing, because you mentally, it's going to be difficult. You haven't been prepared. So, but I think when you do the tools and techniques that help you to start raise your levels of thinking big, you prepare yourself, and you start to do window shopping. You go to an open house on a beautiful beach, you know, to a
Mm-hmm.
$5 million house, and you go to the
Mm-hmm.
Aston Martin dealership, and you get a feel and a smell of the car and all that stuff. You start to open yourself up to the possibilities step by step. So that's very important to do it in that manner. That's it. So the course transformation is like a 2 or 3 month course.
Uh-huh.
It's not a 5-hour course or anything. So it takes you through this development process, because every time you take a step, you're rewiring your neural pathways.
Yeah.
You can't just go from here to there. You've got to be ready for it. And so that's the
Right.
number one thing. The other thing that's really interesting is you know, everyone has a different definition of success. So so-called other successful people I've met, when I meet up with them, we never talk about money. We never talk about business. We talk
Mm-hmm.
about esoteric topics.
Yeah.
We talk about astrology. We talk
Mm-hmm.
about quantum physics. We talk about magic. And no one says, okay, what should we talk about? And someone says, well, I'd like to talk about magic. It just happens naturally.
Yeah.
And I think that's because everybody has mentally and emotionally put themselves in a place where the side effect of doing what they do is that wealth comes along too. And one of the
Mm-hmm.
challenges I have a lot with people who, you know, it's the surveys show that most people would rather talk about their sex lives than talk about money. Money frightens people. And
Yes.
so I have to explain to everybody what money is. So money is just another form of energy. You're just converting energy into this thing that we created for no apparent reason centuries ago called money. and we're recreating now in probably into something like decentralized coinage. But so it's just flow. And so you have to let money flow in your life. So, if somebody gives you $100,000 and you put it in the bank and you sit on it, you will not get any more flow. That's going to be it for you for this life, probably, until you learn the lesson. If somebody gives you $100,000 and you say, oh, that's nice, I'll go and buy an Aston Martin, maybe a secondhand one, I'll spend 40,000 in that, and I'm going to invest the other 60,000 into my first company or something like that. Now you understand flow. And so you're creating flow, you're converting the energy into some other format. When that happens, money comes to you out naturally. And then the next thing, you're standing like on an ocean of money, like a Richard Branson, for instance. And all you have to do is dip in every now and again to, to use what you need to live. So money is flow. And so financial independence is not a summit on a mountain. Richard Branson is not sat in his vault on top of a pile of coins. He's in the process of creating flow continuously.
Right.
And that's a really important thing to learn. When I had to learn it. And so when you learn that, you have a completely different attitude. And then using things like, terms like 100 million or a billion, you don't think about it anymore, because all you're talking about is flow. You're talking about a bigger river. And that's the way it's going to happen in my life. And you never stop. You never, you don't, if you dam a river, it'll cause stagnation and all kinds of problems. So the same thing with money. If you dam the money by, put it under the mattress.
Right.
Stagnates.
I think you also mentioned in your book about how some people will say, if you're going to open a new business, have savings for 2 years before you open the business. And in your book, you don't agree with that. And it kind of is reminding me of what you're talking about, money's flow. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, money will flow to you. But everything that you need to succeed in your business will flow to you, whether that's money or something else. People particularly, the fantastic people I've met through my businesses that I would never have met if I hadn't started those businesses. Yeah. I was given a bit of advice when I worked for a regular company, and the man was George Rothman. He built Amgen up to 60 billion and then ICOS up to 30 billion, I think it was, before it was sold. And he was in his 70s when I met him for the first time. And he wanted to hire me for something, and I said no, because I'm starting my first business. And so I was waxing lyrical to this genius of a man, the Bill Gates of the biotechnology industry. I, Trevor Blake, was waxing lyrical about my silly little business plan. And he put his hand up and he said, Trevor, you don't know what business you're in until you get in the business. Just start. And so that's my approach to all the businesses. Just start. And you know what? You'll figure it out. And it'll flow to you. Just start. And so I took his advice, and I wasn't, a couple of years later, I sort of thought about it. I thought, now I get what he meant, because I started thinking I was going in one direction, and very quickly I met somebody who took me in a completely different direction, in a far more successful direction as well.
Wow.
And so he's right. Just start. Don't listen to all that stuff that you need this, you need that. All of the studies I've read about what makes success point to the same thing. There's always two things. It's a tendency to set targets and self-confidence.
Confidence. And confidence is not born overnight sometimes. For many people, you have to build it. And I like the idea, again, of looking at these biographies in a different way. I'm going to have to pick up that one that you mentioned. Another question I have is that, what would you think, what does it take to create $100 million idea? When people think about the business and what to start, what's a good starting point for them? Because the sky's the limit. How do they know what the $100 million business idea is?
I think you feel it rather than know it. But the first thing is I advise people, and some people disagree with me on this, it's just a personal opinion, but I advise people to look at what makes them mad. Richard Branson once said, don't bother starting a company unless you're really frustrated about something. I totally agree. His whole airline is built on the fact that he couldn't get to see his girlfriend. His flight was canceled. He was in Miami.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, she's in the Bahamas. He's in love with her. He's going to propose to her, and his flight's canceled. So he was really frustrated, and so he's walking up and down the airport, and he decides to charter a plane. And then he gets a blackboard. He tells his story brilliantly. It's an absolute true story, and it's in his book too, his biography. He gets a blackboard and he writes on it, something airlines, Virgin. I think he did call it Virgin Airlines because it hadn't existed prior to that moment, so it was a Virgin airline. And he sold seats on the plane and filled the plane, and that allowed him to pay the charter price for the plane. And he flew everybody to the island. And he says, I'm sure the story has been embellished over time, but he says one of the passengers got off and said, you know, if we improve your service, this would be a really good airline. And,
What?
and he got to meet his wife. Okay. So, you know, he was mad about something. He was really mad that his flight got
Yeah.
canceled. And so that's really hit a note with me when I read that, you know, a couple of decades ago.
Interesting.
And
Interesting.
so I've observed since, you know, like the founder of Netflix got mad when he went to Blockbusters and he was charged a fee because he hadn't rewound the tape. This is in the days of videotapes. And he came with the idea, why can't video stores be more like a gym where you pay a membership and you pay the same membership regardless of how long if you use it or you don't use it. So you could keep the same video. And then so he started CDs by mail. That was the original Netflix. I remember subscribing to it. And then that became, you know, and street. He had no idea there was a thing called streaming that was going to come in and change the universe. He started out with a completely different business model, but like I say, until you get in the business, you don't know what business you're in. So now, you know, he actually now has the wonderful story where you can say he put Blockbuster out of business because they charged him $10 fine for not rewinding a video.
Yeah. You know, watch who you're messing with. Watch who you're messing with.
So my advice to people is try to look for things that get under your skin a little bit. Things that you think, you know, I wish someone would fix that. I wish there was a solution for that. And I wish someone had invented that.
Right.
And go do it yourself.
Yeah. You know, I often say the same thing, and I speak to it in regards to helping, you know, people conceive of their own movement, whatever their spiritual movement, whatever their movement's going to be. But it does start with some level of rage, you know, like Mother Teresa was pissed. You know,
Yeah.
Gandhi was pissed. They weren't just like floating up. And I mean, they used their emotion to like make some good shit happen.
Well, but they did it in a really clever way. So Mother Teresa is famously quoted. She was asked a question about a particular war zone or something. And she said to the journalist, "Young man, I'm not against war. I'm for peace." And in that little quote
So
is
good.
magic. That is magic.
Yeah.
And that struck a chord in me, you know, decades ago. And I thought, it's all about, you know, if you get mad about something, but you don't stay mad, you then change your attitude to, I'm going to fix this.
You convert it. You have to transmute the energy. Otherwise, we're punching ourselves in the head in life, feeling like victims. And I actually just spoke with a woman, one of my clients, and I was talking to her about a future business or whatever. Really, her number one issue was like, I'm so anxious. And I was like, okay, so we wanted to dig into like, you know, why she's anxious. And really, her anxiety was born. There's this movement, this business bubbling inside of her. So we kind of like articulated the business, and she was super excited by the end. She's like, I'm going to get up and I'm going to stand up and I'm going to do something about it.
Exactly.
So, you know, so it really is just a conversion, a transmutation, a magic. It's like, here's this thing. Now, what are you going to do about it? You can sit around, twiddle your thumbs.
Well, it's funny because, you know, I avoid complainers like I avoid smokers. So but when you're trapped with someone who's complaining, my response is always, so what are you going to do about it? And oftentimes complainers, that's the last thing they want to hear. They just want to complain. You know?
Yeah. Well, I mean, but so many people don't even know it's an option, right? Like, so she was like, oh, I have this anxiety. I'm like, that anxiety is trying to give birth to something amazing. What are we going to do about it? And she was like stoked by the end, like, yeah, it's time. And she had been sitting on this body of work for like 10 years. And it didn't occur to her, like, now's the time, you know, just get up there and do some cool stuff. So, so inspiring, really. But I know that some people think that, you know, if you start, you know, saying that it starts with anger is, you know, somehow controversial. I think it's brilliant. Another way to start it is if you're really excited, like you're excited about something, like as long as the emotions are big around it, when you hit your slumps, you can still kind of get through it, you know?
Yeah, we call it, so in transformation, we call it getting into a state of awe and flow. And I know, you know, a lot of business and personal coaching teachers use those same phrases, but it's, you know, when you get that feeling of awe, it can come from anger. It's how you convert it. It can come from love. It's how you use it. You know, it doesn't matter what the original motivation or for the emotion is. It's what you then do with it. And so when you get into a state of awe, that's when you know, that's so powerful. That's where you're jumping up and down and you can't sleep because you've got to do something about it.
You just gotta. I love that, coming from awe. That's really beautiful. So true. So yeah, I think that's amazing wisdom, first of all, for people who are either starting a movement or starting their 100 million. I mean, everybody promised me you're going to be thinking in the 100 millions, because why not? What else are we doing? All right. I'm definitely going to change a thing or two on my dream board, put it that way. So, but I wanted to ask you, I know that you love talking about, as you know, when you're working really with life, but also in business, working with the feminine. What does that mean for you? Because I was so impressed to hear that that is kind of part of your magical equation. And again, I feel like people are catching up with that energy. Things are shifting.
I think it's resonating right now to talk about. So we have to give labels in science. You know, when you discover something in science, because it hasn't been discovered before, it doesn't have a name, so you give it labels. And so you know, we call different types of energy masculine energy and feminine energy,
Mm-hmm.
and they are true. And I have a very visual sort of communication mode, so I like to see pictures of it. So when I think about masculine energy, which is, you know, existed for you know, at least the last 400 or 500 years, particularly through the Industrial Revolution, and at the cost of suppressing feminine energy. What a better world it would be if that hadn't happened. But that's what unfortunately did happen. It's a linear type of style of energy. It's very slow. It's very methodical. It's like a clipboard. You know, and you're
Yes.
nodding. And if I say this, my wife would be looking at me and nodding at me. Yeah, that's you. She'd be saying to me. You know, that's how you go through life. You know, take one, because she says, I can't. If you're concentrating on one thing, I can't talk to you. You don't even hear me. And so that's a masculine sort of energy. Now, it's not a gender
Totally.
conversation, because you and I are both born half female, half
Sure.
male. The only difference is an XY chromosome. It's tiny, tiny difference. But because I was identified as a male and you're identified as a female, we become a product of that environment. So then I grow up using my masculine energy and suppressing my feminine energy.
Yeah.
And fortunately now that's all changing. We're moving into a feminine energy, and I'll talk about that in a sec.
It is changing. Yes.
How I recognized all this and changed it is I was absolutely blessed to have a mother who was incredibly powerful and relied on her feminine energy, and I was in awe of that. You know, she was given 6 months to live when she was, you know, I was 7, and I was with her one time, because we didn't have babysitters in those days, and we didn't have cars and everything. So I was actually in the hospital with her when the doctor gave her that announcement one time, and she leaned forward and she said to the doctor, "Young man, you've got that completely wrong. I'll decide when I die, and no one else." And I saw it in her eyes, and I thought, my God. I mean, I was scared of her when she shouted at me. I wouldn't have wanted to be that doctor. I tell you. So, and she did, you know, she fought and fought and fought, and she kept the family going by walking 5 miles to and 5 miles from a part-time job in a delicatessen when she had bone metastases and two
What?
to walk up a mountain, down a mountain. And we went with her when we could, you know,
Jeez.
and seeing that power, you know, the protection of a family, that no one's disrupting my nest, thank you very much, till they're all cleared out. That was very, very important to me as a kid, to see that indefatigable, what that actually means. And she introduced me to my wife, who was her chemotherapy nurse. So and my wife is the same thing. And so I saw my mother very often make a decision that made absolutely no sense whatsoever, but it was always the right one to make, and she relied on her intuition. My wife Lynn, who fortunately for me is also clairvoyant and clairaudient, she relies on, you know, so she'll I'll say to her, you know, I'm going to do this, and she says, no, that's a bad idea. I said, how can you say that? You don't even know the guy. I've known him for years. It's going to be good. She says, no, it's a bad move. And she's always right. And so for me, that's the power of the feminine side of all of us. And so I've worked really hard on tools and techniques that can make me better with my intuition, more able to adapt quickly. Like the old male energy in business was, you know, if you have a problem, hire someone to deal with it or call a meeting. That's gone. All those companies are crumbling. We can see them, Circuit Cities and Sears and Macy's and all.
Interesting.
Their history. Since Macy's put their senior executive team together, who are all men, they're now out of business. They're gone. And it's so this feminine energy is really swirly and fast and unforgiving and it's empathetic. But history shows, you know, that female warriors who were incredibly successful, they didn't go back and pick up the wounded. They left them, and they didn't take prisoners. It's a very unforgiving energy, and we're seeing that now play out in the business world. Because if you don't stay in tune with technology, you're dead. Your history. If you don't change the way you work, so I've had to learn to develop trust over supervisionary skills. I've had to learn to develop intuitive decision making instead of calling meetings. You know, if you don't change, you get left behind. And so for me, that's what that's all about. So I call it the power of the feminine, because it's something that I think is beautiful and gorgeous. But I've just been really lucky that I've seen it played out in real life first.
Hmm.
You know, I've seen it through my mother and my wife and a couple of other people that I've been lucky to know.
Yeah, and I think that's where people start really do building trust. You have to see it in action, unless you're just kind of naturally dialed in, and you're already like some kind of tree hugger and like to talk. It's like you just get it. But I'm definitely seeing an uptick in the languaging again of the magical, mystical arts. Um, it's beyond meditation now. I think meditation was like the safe way that people would be like, okay, let's just meditate during our business. But now people are talking about energy with regards to life, with business. They're talking about the feminine, the intuition,
And
which is
balance.
balance, which is so
Life
important.
balance has come back. And COVID's horrible for those who've suffered through it, but for other people,
Yeah.
it's shown them again what life used to be like before the Industrial Revolution. This village-centric place where the the priorities were family, spirit, leisure, work. The Industrial
Yeah.
Revolution comes along and it changes to work, 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 and work.
Like only work.
Yeah, and that's it. And so now we're moving back because everyone's realizing now, you know what, I can work from home a couple of hours and just be as effective as I used to be in the corporate office. No politics, no bullshit, none of that stuff. And I
Yeah.
have time for my family, and I'm present for my family, and all that kind of stuff. So it's going to take a while, but I feel that that's also the power of the feminine. That this sort of nurturing,
Yeah.
empathetic side is starting to come to the fore. And I see realistic results from it, because when I study, I do forensic studies of companies and stuff like that. Companies that are female led since 2008 are 66% more profitable than companies that are male led since 2008.
Profitable. And what about attrition? They retain employees more as well? Do you know?
The concept of employees is also going away.
Oh, they're contractors. Do they stick around longer? Wow.
They're good at what they do, and they
Yeah.
focus on what I'm good at what I do, and you hire them
Yeah.
to do it for a couple of hours a week instead of I teach that kind of business model, but the analogy I use is, when you buy a new house, you don't hire a full-time handyman just in case something goes wrong. That's the old model. Okay, you hire a guy who comes in when something breaks, and so the new business model is to hire people who just do the work that's needed to be done, and you get out of their way and let them.
Yeah. I mean, I love it. And I feel like that's why my business has actually done so well, because I just hire experts when you need them. And then that's it. And it prevents all that, so much bloating and kind of bad blood too, that can happen if I know companies have a hard time getting rid of a low performer sometimes. There's so many loopholes.
That's true, and especially in America, actually, that's really, really true. You can't just say no. You can't fire somebody without consequences. But with a
No.
contractor, you just don't renew the contract.
Exactly. So I love that as a business model. Let's talk a little bit more about what you feel. I agree with you on the COVID thing. I know that it's been really challenging for a lot of us, and I definitely go through my ups and downs with the shifts that are happening on the planet. But the fruits, are also emerging. Family time. I think we even talked at the beginning of this call about, wow, kids are playing on the street again. There's families playing ball, like dads are with their kids playing ball and not working, 12 hours a day kind of thing. So it's really beautiful. What are some other themes coming up for you when it comes to this whole situation that we're finding ourselves in on the planet?
Well, it's an age. So I study a lot of different disciplines. Some of them are way out there, and some are fairly normal, like astrological or cycle analysis and stuff like that.
Awesome.
And I find that most people I know who are also successful businessmen or businesswomen do the same thing, because it gives you an advantage to be prepared for what's coming.
Yeah.
And so again, we have to give them labels. So this age goes by a number of different labels. It's called the Great Societal Reset in some places. It's called the Age of Transformation in others. I've started calling it the Great Age of Transformation and Rebalance, because I like the energy aspect. It's just trying to get back to equilibrium. We go too far one way and then we come back.
We went too far.
Yeah, and you see it in every aspect of life. I mean, yeah. I don't follow politics or religion, but you're seeing extremes in both of those disciplines right now, and you're seeing it also in social unrest throughout the world. Right now, I think there's 195 countries, and 45% are experiencing really serious social unrest right now. Mm-hmm. So you're seeing this, because change is confusing and frightening, and people go, you don't understand that. Don't go against what you don't like. Go for what you want to improve. And so you end up with these horrible situations. So all of that is changing, and that's okay, because what comes out of it is something beautiful. This too will pass. This is not the first pandemic. I still remember swine flu that infected 100 million Americans, and nobody did a thing.
Yeah. Wow.
There was no lockdown, no masks, nothing like that. I remember
Wow.
Hong Kong flu, and I remember
No kidding.
chickenpox things, and they pass. They're part of that. They're part of life. They're horrible if you get caught up in it.
Mm-hmm.
But then so is cancer and heart disease and all those things. So
Yeah. Yeah.
they're all part of a life experience. So coming out of this will be for me, if what I read and study is correct, is an upsurge in female leadership at every level of society. So in every institution, in politics, in religion, in business, in schools, whatever it is an upsurge in the power of the feminine. But because women are more in tune with that, it's more likely that unless men like me catch up quickly, then the world moves to a female-dominated world. And I think that's going to be a beautiful thing. I mean, it's no surprise that the countries with the lowest deaths per million COVID cases are all led by female heads of state.
Wow.
And it's because they put people's health first and economy second.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that's brilliant. That's an amazing statistic. So that is something that hasn't occurred to me, is that the rise of feminine leadership. I mean, I know it's happening, but for this time to be a catalyst for that, that's a really fascinating perspective.
Yeah, and for as a man, I don't want to suffer what women have suffered for the last 400 years. I don't want to be suppressed and pushed underground. I want to be part of this new era, because I love technology and I love adaptation. I love things changing quickly. So I'm having to learn, an old dog learning new tricks. So and that's the message I have for male entrepreneurs. There's no escaping this. There's, energy is energy. You can't avoid it. So you have to allow yourself to get caught up in it and learn to be a different person.
Right. And I'm just kind of getting this feeling of, it's almost like right now, many of us, we are being called to become a little more fluid, if you will, a little less rigid on how we need things to be. And so there is a way in which you can tap into that intuitive field. What are some of your favorite methods or techniques to use to help someone who might not be super dialed into their intuition? What helped you?
It's really simple. So I meditate every morning, and
Mm-hmm.
so there's several things that I found that other people did in biographies that I thought, well, I'll do that. And in their time, they didn't call it meditation; they called it something else. And like Henry Ford used to just sit in a rocking chair in his old dilapidated farmhouse, and that's where he came up with all his great ideas. So I learned I taught myself a technique, the simplest technique possible, that anyone can do from the age 95 to 5 years old. And you just basically take quiet time, and you just treat yourself, just you give yourself 15-20 minutes of just your time for me, quietly alone in your own space, whatever space motivates you. So typically for me, it's outside, but it doesn't have to be. So meditation is very important. And then once you meditate, so when you meditate, scientifically, all these changes happen in your brain. So the question is, what do I do next? And that's the key mistake I think a lot of people make. They'll switch on the TV and watch the news headlines. Well, why did you bother meditating?
So true.
So I go outside and I go for a walk in the woods, sometimes alone, sometimes with my animals, and I just let what's going to happen, and so I connect, basically. So I connect.
Yeah.
I create new neural pathways, and then I plug them in. This is what I call it. You go out and you plug them into nature and let nature teach.
Oh, it's so wise. I mean, I had to go through a little, telephone detox, like not reading the news for a while, because it was the first thing I would do in the mornings, grab my phone and like, what other shit has happened now? This is like in the beginning of COVID. So I had to like put down the phone, make sure it's not near my bed before I go to sleep. And now I change up my morning practices, but right now I'm going out and I just give like good juju. Like I give good vibes to the tree, like, hello, beautiful tree. I send blessings to them, and I smoke some sacred tobacco and just give everything blessings. And it's such a different reality when I do that versus run for my phone to see what other headlines are going to reel me in, you know?
I think that's great, and it's brilliant advice, and hopefully all the people who listen to you and follow you really hear that, because it's so important. I do not go near a device until 9 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
And it takes discipline, doesn't it? Because
It
you
does.
hear the ding, and you think, oh, that might be important.
I know, especially if you're launching something or, you know, there's stuff going on. It's, you know,
it's toxic, and you have to discipline yourself to stay away from it. So a little trick, and it's an expensive one for some people, but it's a really good trick, is to have separate devices for work and home. That way you'll never be disturbed at home by work matters, and while you're working, you'll never be distracted by.
you know, that's a good point, Trevor, because I do a lot of work from my phone, and I have a lot of robust online communities and Facebook communities. And you know what? I'm gonna really look into that. That's a
It's
really
so
great
freeing.
idea.
It's so freeing when you do that, because, you know, at the end of the day, you've earned your time for you and your family. And so, you know, I leave my work devices. I have a laptop and a telephone. I leave it locked in my office.
Mm-hmm.
And then, so I know at nighttime, if my phone goes, it's someone I actually do want to talk to.
Yeah, it doesn't
They're
stress you
separate
out.
numbers, and vice versa. The other thing is, when you're working, because I work a 5-hour workday, well, that's an exaggeration. It's typically normally about 3, but when I have the dedicated work period, I've got to
Mm-hmm.
focus. And you know, if the phone dings, and I might automatically think, oh, that's got to be Lynn calling me. Something might have happened. And once I'm distracted, you know, science shows it takes 30 minutes to get back on track. And so
Mm-hmm.
your productive period becomes unproductive if you don't separate them. That's why I do it. There's all of these tools and techniques I have in the new book, Secrets to a Successful Startup, and I'm not promoting a book. All of my proceeds go to cancer research and development, so everyone wins. But we're in a time where I
Awesome.
felt like the advice of how to create winning ideas, how to convert it into a company, how to discipline yourself so you get balance in your life, that everyone wants to know this now. So I wrote the book years ago, but it's you know, again, serendipitous. It's just
It's
come out
so
recently.
timely.
Yeah,
Yeah,
came out
it's,
February this year, and you know, the title is a recession proof. The tagline is a recession
I
proof.
know.
I wrote that 2 years ago.
I know. I was like, wow. Okay, so you got your intuition dialed in. All those morning sits, they paid off.
I think this one. I think this one was less intuition and more predictability, because, you know, the recession
The
is not.
cycle.
Yeah, recession is not caused by COVID. The COVID exacerbates recession. Recession is caused by corporate stock buybacks and corporate bonds, which is really the government handing beautiful cash over to poorly run companies. That's not going to end well. And so it's just a
Yeah.
question of when. You know, I think I just got lucky that this year is the same. It's the same year as
I
the book
know.
came
I
out.
love it. I love it. Well, I think it's really important. And I feel like, you know, one of the shifts that are also maybe getting catalyzed are more people looking towards entrepreneurship in one way or the other. I think we need as many people as we can, you know, sailing their ship in smart ways, you know. I love business so much. I didn't know
It
I
doesn't have to
loved
be.
business.
No, it doesn't have to be commerce. It can be music, art, writing. It can be in any discipline, which
Yeah.
is how it used to be before the Industrial Revolution. You know, a village-centric culture where everyone just made craft things, and, you know,
I know.
some people plowed a field, some people made a basket, and we're going to head back to that, because you can today, you know, soon, you could be in central Zimbabwe, and so long as you have access to electricity and a computer, you can be as an effective decentralized worker as someone who's in New York or Silicon Valley, and you can be part of
Mm-hmm.
the same thing. So the whole world is changing that way, and, you know, I'm excited. I just want to make sure I'm part of it.
Yeah, me too. I'm excited too. I'm all amped up, and I can't wait to change my dream board later tonight.
You just need to change the decimal point.
I know, like I need a lot more zeros. That's crazy. I don't even know why it didn't even dawn on me. Like, you know, it's like our ceilings are definitely there. Our vision is definitely, yeah. All right, so I'll be doing that, and I'll let you know how it goes. So, Trevor, how can people follow up with you? Get your book or your books or whatever, or your
Everything.
courses.
Yeah, it's also the same portal, because I have well, you know them, beautiful team of Mathis and Lara, and Kevin.
Yeah,
So just go to trevorgblake.com.
trevorgblake.com.
Yeah, the G's for George is my middle name. So
Yeah.
trevorgblake.com, and everything's there. And there's a free download, the practical magic of the 5-hour workday. And if that's the only connection we ever have, any of us, that still would be valuable to you.
Yeah, and
Change the way you think
I'll put
about
the
work.
link. I'll put the
Yeah.
link also in the episode, so you can have that. I mean, it's fabulous. Before we leave, Trevor, is there any last little nuggets you wanna leave our crew with?
I honestly believe that history will show that this is the best and there will never be a better time to start your own thing, to reinvent yourself in anything. Just reinvent yourself. But the important thing is, without the panic of how am I going to survive, because the ability to get rapid financial independence is unbelievable today. When I started my first company, you know, it
Sure.
was, you had to start regionally, build it, build it, build it. Now you can, you know, get a computer, press a button, and engage the whole world instantaneously. So
Yeah.
and I'm seeing it happen all the time. Like the Lululemon just bought a guy's idea. He had it Christmas 2017. He sold it 2 months ago for $500 million.
Yeah. Wow.
That's
Wow.
fast. That's really fast. That's this new spiraling female energy. So the opportunity is here for everyone. And I don't think anyone who's listening to this wants to be grandpa or grandma whose grandkids say, well, what were you doing then? Oh,
Yeah, exactly. Oh, wow. That's such a great. So, it's important for people to like maybe tap into that rage, tap into their anger. What is it that they want to fix? But now I feel you're right. Now's the time. And I didn't know how rapid things fly when you get online until I kind of ventured on there and I was like, whoa, okay, we didn't see that coming. So highly recommend your work, Trevor. So important what you're doing. I love the balance that you bring between, like I don't know, 18, 19, how many $100 million businesses that you have. I don't even know if I can count that high. Was it, So, but that you're bringing the magic and the intuition and all the good, you're bringing the balance to the playground, which is so awesome. So thanks for sharing your awesomeness with us today.
I appreciate it. Thanks for the questions. This was so much fun.
Yeah, thank you.